turns out that Jonathan says there are only 3 Indian billionaires with yachts, with any yachts of any size, and none with a yacht over 100 meters. Now, does anyone know what a yacht over no, none of you here. Does anyone know what a yacht over 100 meters is called? Anyone? No. It's called a giga yacht. Doesn't that just make you want to run up and hug Owen Jones? Giga yacht. It's called a giga yacht. So there are only 3. Why aren't Indians that interested, or wealthy Indians that interested in having yachts?
I think probably more thrown out to the audience, actually, based on what was last year. I think part of it is access to, I think, open seas. I think part of it is due how to they fit their yachts often with their business interests. I see much more of the ultra-high net worth Indians buying aviation because it is both a personal and a business asset. I think Indians are still very focused on their corporate empires, and luxury yachts are still, I think, seen as being the real toy rather than something that actually also has a practical use. That's my perspective.
Maybe they don't want to display their wealth. Certainly my understanding is that the Indian community do have some sensitivity about buying luxury assets such as aircraft and mega yachts, and if they're seen to be owning these large assets, there may be a feeling that they may be subject to increasing scrutiny by the government authorities in India about their wealth and how much wealth they have and where they've got it from.
Is there a particular advantage in India to having a jet and using it more for business or more for pleasure? Or what does tax dictate anything like that?
I think when you're looking at the Indian marketplace, I think you have to determine whether they're actually resident in India or resident outside India as non-resident Indians. If they're resident outside India, I think it's very much where the UBO is actually tax resident. That will very much drive through a lot of the other analysis, both direct tax and indirect, and also that will lead on from registry and things along those lines.
I think that the main thing being is are all of their assets still within India, and they're based within India, and they want the aircraft to go onto the Indian registry. As soon as you want to place an aircraft onto an Indian registry, you open yourself up to a series of tax issues, both in terms of withholding tax on any finance payments that come out of the country, and also the sales tax.
The global taxation scene is changing quite strongly and quite rapidly, where countries that offer lots of nice double taxation treaties are being told, well, we don't really like that, that's anti-competitive, even though it's very competitive. What do you foresee happening with these global jurisdictions? Do you think within 5 years you won't be able to register these planes through Ireland because the way tax is going, they're going to have to give up that sort of favourable treatment?
Well, I think that's a tricky question to answer, because that really comes down to the way in which the bilateral tax treaties are going to be changed, if at all. My perspective would be that from particularly the Irish side, they would want to keep the double taxation treaties because it's generating business for the country.
I think one of the major game changers that's about to come in terms of just global reporting as a whole is the common reporting standards, which will be coming in. Start coming in at the end of this year, then reporting at the end of beginning part of 2017 and rolling.
Yeah, I think absolutely. There has been probably more transactions written outside of India using trust companies and offshore structures to support that regime. I think what we're starting to see now is people are starting to put transactions on hold for 2 things: to understand what's coming through in terms of the tax treaties, but also to understand what's happening in terms of the election here in the UK, and understanding where that sits. And once there is clarity around those 2 things, I think it will start to open up the markets again. But initially, the banks are going to be incredibly nervous because none of them want to become the next political football.
What is changing in the world of aviation, in particular for Indians buying it? Are their attitudes changing towards what they're buying? Are they going bigger and bigger? Are they getting a fleet? What's happening?
When you can look at actually the public register of actually what's available in terms of the top 6 Indian billionaires, they are all buying the big long haul jets. So you're talking your top end Gulfstreams, you're talking your top end Globals, and some are actually talking. Me and Austen did a transaction on an Airbus, VIP spec Airbus, so you can actually get. Why? Because it's quite interesting. I looked at this before I came out. I pulled out Bombardier. Bombardier is a major manufacturer. They do the Global range, which is a series of very large-scale jets. But only once you get to their top 2 does Delhi suddenly appear on their range map. Why? Because if you're looking at people who are non-resident Indians or resident Indians, you need that range, okay, from Delhi to be able to get to the main points of business. So Sydney, Los Angeles, New York, Dubai, you need that range. They tend to, at least what I see, be the bigger jets. But Austen raised an important one about intra-Indian transport.
Yes, I mean, there was probably an element of business-type aircraft, perhaps smaller business aircraft, maybe even down to turboprops that are used within the country for business. In terms of the majority of business that I see for high net worth individuals, it tends to be the larger jets. My experience is very much the same as Jonathan's. Probably the smallest jet I've been involved in is a sort of Challenger 300, but sort of intermediate range. But certainly, I was alluding to earlier Indians acquiring aircraft that are offshore registered, offshore owned. My experience there has been the same with Jonathan, that those are long-range aircraft like Globals or Gulfstreams.
I just had a question with respect to luxury cars in India. I'm not sure if it still falls in this forum, but there are a lot of more than jets and yacht and whatnot. I have seen a lot of luxury cars, Rolls-Royce, the likes of really big brands. What is your take on that in terms of is that where the dominant market, the investment, real estate is of course one, but the other bits such as the cars, I would like to get your thoughts on it.
I think in a lot of these now very affluent and emerging markets, I think the top-end motor car is seen as being the kind of first-level status of being this blossoming wealth. You've seen it in India, you've seen it in China. So yeah, I mean, I see that as the pinnacle that rolls on in. But I say there's a big difference between spending £500,000 on a top-of-the-end bespoke roller to spending $50 million on a Gulfstream.
I think one of the things that we've yet to see really occur in India is the move into the classic car market. From a high net worth individual's perspective around the rest of the world, they're very much bought into the classic car market as being an appreciating asset. If you look at what's happened in car values over the last 8 years, they've been a fantastic investment opportunity. We haven't really seen that in India yet. So I think it is more of an overt show of wealth rather than an investment.